Excellent. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. First up today, we have Sally Brummel coming from the Whitney and Elizabeth Macmillan Planetarium at Bell Museum. She's going to be talking about a charge forward, activating the nation's planetariums to excite the public about human space exploration of Mars. Take it away, Sally.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. A charge forward is a Bell Museum's NASA Team 2 award funding a planetarium show called Mars, the Ultimate Voyage, and a toolkit of hands-on activities. And they're both focused on how to keep humans healthy, safe, and motivated, excuse me, during long-distance space travel to Mars. And we're rolling out distribution of these. Both will be available at no license fee to planetariums. So we're starting to license the show now, and we'll be sharing the activities later this year. So this presentation and some articles I'll be talking about are available in a Google folder for everybody to download. So at this QR code and also that link, z.umn.edu, SFA23, that'll be on, I think, most if not every slide. So if you don't pick it up right now, the URL will be there, and I'll put the QR code up at again too. So in this paper, I'll be talking about the major components, a demographic study we did, the planetarium show, the activities, the summative evaluation, and the distribution. So the demographic study came about because we were required to provide specific demographics when we proposed this back in 2018 about the communities that would be reached. But we don't collect demographic data about our planetarium visitors. We couldn't find any really robust data in the planetarium field in general. And there is that information for informal science institutions overall, but not focusing on planetarium visitors. So we added that as an objective to our proposal, an independent evaluation to fill this critical knowledge gap about audiences. So we selected one planetarium from each of the 7 regions. Is there anyone who participated in that demographic study in there? Yeah, so thank you. So lots of planetariums helped us throughout this whole process. So a big thank you to all of those. So we sent emails out to their member or visitors lists. Over 16,000 people were invited to take the survey. And then we also used SurveyMonkey Audience to purchase 100 responses. So survey 100 people from each city that the planetarium was in. And so we got over 1,800 planetarium visitor responses, and then almost 700 from the general population. So we asked about demographic information, a rating of their interest in science, and what kind of cultural institutions that they visit. That was what the survey was. So we wanted to find out, what is the demographic makeup, both of people who do and also who don't visit the planetarium. So the vast majority of the sample that completed the surveys, whether it was from the visitors or not, white, female, with moderate to high education, or sorry, moderate to high income, and at least a college degree. So there's an article that was just published in the journal Visitor Services about the whole demographic study. So it's available at that link, which will be on other slides. So the whole demographic breakdown is in there if you're interested. But I really shouldn't be surprised at the lack of inclusion. So this led our evaluation team to think about some interesting questions, if there are any patterns that emerge among planetarium visitors. So we ended up combining the pools of both people, no matter how we got the responses, and just split it into people who had reported that they visited a planetarium in 2019 and 2020, and those who hadn't. And we focused on the lens of intersectionality. So this idea that human characteristics such as race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, education, age, are not mutually exclusive within a person, but in fact, they work in concert or even sometimes against each other. And so there are 8 demographic intersectional groups that we studied here. And essentially the bottom portion of the bar is the percentage of people in each of the categories that was not visitors, and the top is orange. So I don't want to go through every category, but the point is, this is a way to learn about who is and who isn't coming to your planetarium. We didn't set out to do this analysis, so we didn't really go through the proper research protocols and sampling the right number of people from these groups. So the Bell isn't going to get any useful information from this. The other 6 planetariums aren't really, but overall this gives us an idea of how to explore data in intersectional ways in future studies to identifying specific groups of community members that your planetarium might partner with to learn more about non-visitors. For example, if these were the results for one planetarium, they might want to understand more about why most Asian men do not visit the planetarium, or why most Hispanic men do choose to visit, while most Hispanic women do not. My GLIPA paper last fall was all about the demographic study, so also in that folder is that paper and the proceedings paper I read. If you want to dig a little bit more into how we're going to use this demographic study and then how it might apply to some of your work. So, in my opinion, the main event of the grant was a planetarium show. So for the second time, we partnered with the Full Dome production team from the Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center. So for the production process, we start with a kickoff meeting. We know the topic, but to guide our development of the show, we want to come away right away with the key takeaways. So what we decided to address are that long-distance spaceflight is more complicated than I thought, STEM careers are cool, and I see myself and people like me in STEM. And we phrased it this way because our audience was 4th to 8th graders. So, we're not looking at really formal things. We want things that those kids will think are cool. So the trailer will also be in that folder if you want to take a look at it. Along the way, we had multiple formative evaluation sessions. So we had very early on, students read the script, and we got some ideas like simplify the language, have more enthusiastic tone because people liked it better when people talked more expressively as opposed to slow and less expressive. Then we played a rough cut of the show to 4th to 8th grade audiences in 4 Minnesota planetariums. And so this was in the winter of 2020, so January, February. And we wanted to focus on whether the show was meeting those key takeaways. Most students recognize that diverse teams will be crucial to a successful mission to Mars. And we learned that messages about the role that today's youth might play in future Mars missions were clear to the older students in that group. So the planetarium show opened at the Bell last December. The Moorhead Planetarium is showing it now in North Carolina, and we're starting to roll it out to other planetariums, including here at Bays Mountain. And then this summer, we're also producing a Spanish language narration track and also an audio recorded version to play for audiences that have people who are blind or have low vision. So both of those will also be available with our distribution package. The toolkit, as we're calling it, is designed to dig deeper into the content of the show, which focuses on the 5 hazards of long-distance spaceflight that NASA identified. So isolation and confinement, a hostile enclosed environment, the great distance to Mars, radiation, and altered gravity fields. So the one that's pretty much finished, which we use in the evaluation we'll talk about next, is a cooperative board game for people to try and get to Mars and back safely. We have an activity about going the distance, about the distance to Mars, and then a radiation activity. And these will be designed to, some can be used in a classroom setting, some can be used when a group can have some time to focus, or some can be used for a quick tabling event. So this spring we did the summative evaluation of the show, where the students watched the show, played the board game, and then took a survey. And is anyone in here who was part of yes, Sean, and many other planetariums? I want to give a big thank you to Dave Burgess, Lisa Goodman, Brian Kohler, Sean Latch, Melinda O'Malley, Sarah Schultz, Aaron Slonecker, and Hillary Stevens, and anyone who works with them. So we had 407 students do this. And we wanted to see if they met our proposal's overall goals to show improved literacy skills, interest and intention to pursue STEM careers, and identifying sustainable space exploration as a key area of NASA research. So we just got the final report at the end of last week. I'm still digging into it. I will have it available for you guys to read. I don't really have any grand conclusions to present to you because we're still kind of processing it. 91% reported they learned something new, and we were glad that what they learned is that they learned something that's important to NASA. That was in NASA's call for proposals, is they want us to bring to the public what NASA thinks is important, so we were able to meet that. And then, are they interested in pursuing STEM careers? Well, overall, in the survey they took, they're kind of undecided or ambivalent. Students recognize more that STEM careers are important than they were actually interested in it, but actually 5th graders showed the most interest of any grade group, and 6th graders showed the least. So that's interesting to see what happens between those two grades. We know that one survey of a few hundred students after a 2-hour experience isn't going to provide any support of whether this show and this game is going to inspire one of the kids in those audiences to pursue STEM careers. But we know that it happens in our planetariums, right? So that's why I'm really excited to get these to you, because getting it in all the planetariums across the nation, we won't have the data. We won't know a decade from now if, because they saw this show in our planetariums, they're going to pursue STEM. But we also know it's going to happen. That's why we're all here, right? So what's next? So in the final 6 months, we'll be finishing out the show, sharing all the materials. We'll be making 21 sets of the physical activities to share, and we're going to ask institutions who have them to describe their use of them to different groups, including people who have disabilities. We're making some of the activities, and even some of the content in the show is designed to have people of all abilities think that this topic is relevant to them. So after those 21 sets, the templates will be available for anyone to download. So I'm really excited to share this show with everybody. I'll be advertising it soon in all the channels for how we get the news out about what we're doing in planetariums. And email me or give me your email right now if you want to make sure I get this information directly to you. But that's really the main point of this, a no license fee recorded planetarium about this great topic of getting humans to Mars. So thank you. Are there any questions?
All right, we've got about 30 seconds for questions. All right, if you do need to get in touch with Sally, she's got her contact information there, but we will go ahead and switch over to our next presentation. Thanks again, Sally.
Thank you.
All right, up next we have Tiffany Stone Woolbrick from the AUI. She's going to be talking about Astro Excel, Advancing Research-Informed Programming and Practices.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining me this bright and early. I am Tiffany Stone Woolbrick. I work at AUI, and we do outreach to the public and public engagement to educate on astronomy and STEM topics more broadly. I'm here to share with you an exciting new initiative, and it is brand new. It's Astro Excel, which is a global research network for astronomy and education, communication, culture, and learning. Now, the goals of Astro Excel are to accelerate research and research to practice in the key areas of astronomy education and communication. And that research to practice I'm going to emphasize here throughout the presentation, because I think this is especially where planetarians will be very useful to the research, to the initiative, and where you will get a lot out of an initiative like Astro Excel. So we want to demonstrate how astronomy can be used for the development of societies, to advance culture and communication, to address global crises, and meet economic needs. So this is really how astronomy can be used at a high level to make our world a better place. And we know that intuitively through our work and through our experiences. We know that as planetarians, that astronomy is a powerful tool and a powerful connector. But currently, a lot of the research that's being done around these topics are very siloed around the world. And there's really powerful and very knowledgeable, talented people doing this work, but we don't really know one another very well. Sally just gave her wonderful presentation and mentioned that at the beginning of her project, she needed demographics, and that data just wasn't there. And so she created the demographic survey to collect data on the attendees and visitors to planetariums. So there's a lot of work to be done in planetariums in terms of research, understanding our impacts, especially now with COVID and how that's impacted our profession. Having that data as we look to reopen and to reopen positions that have been cut. AstroExcel is a really great place for us to enrich and advance that research, make it come out, come together, identify those immediate needs, and begin to collect that research and publish the papers that all of us will need when we're advocating for our profession. So here are the focus areas that we've listed for AstroExcel. Oh, and I want to mention thank you to the National Science Foundation. They've recently supported AstroExcel. So when I say it's brand new, just as of last month, we got the green light for this. So it'll be a 3-year initiative, thanks to the National Science Foundation, that will kick off AstroExcel. Here are our focus areas. I personally don't like the delineation between formal and informal education, but it is still quite siloed in the language of the world. So we will be focusing on both of those, and I envision they'll be very much blended together. Astronomy communication, which is a huge topic now, and we see with a huge rise of miscommunication and misinformation around science. I think this will be a really important topic. And then, of course, astronomy for economic and social development. It's not something that we think about right away, that astronomy can actually be used for economic development. But if you talk to our friends in Chile, there's amazing wineries who have become hugely successful because they've added an astrotourism component to their wineries. And that's just one example that comes to mind, but there's many across the world. And then we have, through these focus areas, these sort of cross-cutting focus is, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and culture and community. So we will be focusing on highlighting those and studying those impacts across all of these focus areas. So I mentioned research to practice and how I really wanted to emphasize that here, because that's you. Some of you might say, yeah, I would love to do more research. I would love to be a researcher, or I'd love to be involved because I know it's important. And some of you are maybe thinking, I don't know if I'd want to be involved, but I know that it could really help me in my goals at my planetarium. So you would be in the practitioner. And I think most of us would be somewhere in either of these words. But the idea is that we're not just going to accelerate research for researchers, but we're going to bring in the same room both the researchers and the practitioners, everyone that has a vested interest in astronomy education and communication, to have conversations about what's important and what should we be focusing on. And this is going to build community, which I think is very important, but also practitioners can inform their researchers, and researchers might not necessarily be in a classroom or a planetarium day to day, and might not have as clear of a vision as you do in terms of what are students really needing, what is the public missing, those sorts of things. So practitioners inform the research, and you're also in the room to hear what the latest research is saying, which can then inform what you do in your planetarium. So this is I think, a really helpful cycle to focus and accelerate our mutual goals. Here are the partners to date. You'll recognize one especially. The IPS is a partner in AstroExcel. We represent all continents, I believe, except for Antarctica. Something? Yeah, okay. So we have a really great spread so far. And adding partners, we'll continue to add partners as we go. And planetariums are a very important piece of this initiative. So while we will be talking about things like curriculum and science communication, misinformation, all of these things are very closely tied together. And I see this as a really special and timely opportunity for planetarians to gather the data that they need to push ourselves past the COVID woes and into into our next phase, especially with the centennial and things like that. It's going to be great. So here's the project phases for AstroExcel. Roughly a year-ish for these things. Phase 1 will be connecting and developing these existing networks like the ones listed in the previous slide, identifying the research needs and creating that roadmap to accelerate research over the next several years, and how to implement the research. So that will be sort of happening in unison. Then we'll be expanding and accelerating the research in phase 2. There'll be a lot of professional development opportunities and implementation of best practices. Then we will do more broad dissemination and evaluation towards the end. Okay, so if you feel that you think research needs to be accelerated or advanced in the planetarium world, and you'd like to be a part of that in some way, or if you just want to learn more, this is a QR code just to my email. I'm sorry there's not like a website or anything I can point to you just yet. Like I said, we just got the green light last month. But please let me know if you're interested, and I will keep you on my list and keep you updated. I expect activities around AstroExcel to begin definitely this year, but probably within the next few months. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Jean in the back here. I can repeat your question.
Do you have any initial ideas of what might be important questions to research?
So yeah, she's asking, do we have any ideas, or does Tiffany have any ideas of what topics might be important to research? Excellent.
Yes, so all of the partners that were listed here, we've had conversations with, and each of them have ideas about focus areas that we would like to explore. I know that in the planetarium world, I think it would be, I've had conversations with many of you about how there have been entire planetariums where the staff has just been eliminated, and a vendor will get a call like, your logo was on a box in our planetarium, who are you? And so all of that institutional knowledge is gone. And so capturing that data, I think, is really important for our field. But then there's more broad things like how astronomy can be used for economic development after huge natural disasters. There's a lot of talk about that in Puerto Rico right now, and Costa Rica. So it's going to be very broad, and then the goal of the first phase is going to be really hard work, because it's going to be getting us in the same room where we're all clamoring to say, this is important, and then focus that down to where we can help each other advance our goals. Great question, thank you.
Hello. So from similar thing, but from the practitioner perspective, like what are your expectations with that? Because I know, for example, I do high school astronomy, I have that, but other people are doing museums, and so I just envision that a huge spectrum of practitioners.
Yes, thank you. I do agree that there will be a huge spectrum of practitioners and a huge spectrum of researchers, and this is a really ambitious goal, but I think that we're more alike than different, and astronomy has taught us that. And I think once we get in the same room and start to have conversations, we'll start to see those commonalities and be able to take advantage of that.
Any other questions for Tiffany? All right, let's thank her one more time.
Thank you.
All right, believe it or not, we're actually about 3 minutes ahead of schedule. So if anyone would like to run to the restroom, we've got a few minutes. But up next, we've got Raymond Zeke, and we will introduce him here in just a few minutes. Since we do have concurrent sessions, I want to make sure we're starting right at 8:45. So feel free to check the schedule, see what you have coming up next.
Minutes should do. Thank you.
Did you know you're going to be doing this, or was it sort of like a surprise?
Up next, we have Raymond Zeke talking about results from long-term use of computational exercises in teaching a general astronomy class from Illinois State.
Good morning. Full disclosure here, I'm reporting on a continuing study here, so it is very likely that you have seen some of this material in previous reports. Right now, we're reporting on 6 semesters of using computational exercises to teach a general astronomy class. And the course that we're teaching this in is a single semester Gen Ed astronomy course that was originated without a lecture. The math level of this course is algebra and trigonometry. There is a low-level physics course as a prerequisite here. Typical class size is 40 students, split roughly 50-50 between science and non-science majors. Now, this course has evolved some. The original course I developed as a lecture-based traditional astronomy course with no laboratory component. I became involved in education research, learned about active learning and wanted to include that in my courses, and took about half the lecture away and replaced it with active learning activities. And then through a group called Pickup, learned about using computation as an educational tool in class, especially as active learning, and so I converted some of the active learning to computational exercises. All in all, the same astronomy content was retained throughout, which is typical for a gen ed astronomy course there. Now, the active learning that I'm talking about here are instructional methods that actually involve students in the learning process in the classroom, and it requires students to do learning activities in the classroom, often together. The students have to reflect or think about what they're doing, and this work is often done in group work or collaboratively, which means that there's a social component to the learning process, which constructivist learning theories tell us is useful for knowledge construction and retention. Now, active learning tools in general, active learning tools that we have available are lecture tutorials, think pair share activities or peer instruction, and ranking tasks. Specific to astronomy are planetarium shows and observational projects, all of which we've done. The computation that I'm talking about is actually having the students in the classroom as active learning, solving problems by writing programs, by coding calculations. So they create these programs to solve problems. This means that they're integrating concepts and mathematics to produce the solutions, and this reinforces their learning because they're actually working with the concepts to build things. Another advantage of this is that typically 50% of this astronomy course are pre-service STEM teachers, and this allowed me to demonstrate research-based instructional strategies like active learning and computation and group work, and thus set the ground for an apprenticeship of observation of the students. Now, these are some of the computational tools that are available. There are spreadsheets, graphs, various programming languages, and the things that I were using was spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, and graphs, because again, half the class were not scientifically oriented, and spreadsheets are available to everyone, and spreadsheet program is relatively easy to teach. So, here are some of the computational activities that we've done, including some introductory activities which are not listed here. But there are a series of activities on the solar system, Kepler's laws, and planetary climates, things like that. A set of activities on light, electromagnetic radiation, and instruments. A series of activities on stars, star characteristics, star demographics, and Hubble's law. Now, the way that I would do this is that I used Excel spreadsheets. I gave the students, and they would do this on a laptop in class. They would download a template spreadsheet which had some of the material already entered in it. Then they would get further instructions on how to proceed and the questions that they were trying to answer. They would get together in groups then and either create a graph or enter the formula to produce a calculation here. And when we were getting results, the output formatting that the students did was not particularly important to me, so we didn't stress output formatting too much. Examples of some of the exercises, again, the things that you may have seen before. Kepler's law activity where the input was the distance from the sun and the output was the length of the planetary year, and they had set up a spreadsheet to do this. and then reverse this and take the length of the planetary year and get the distance from the sun or the length of the semi-major axis. This does give me the chance to illustrate one of the things that I introduced here, which was naming cells. Here, cell A2 is the input of distance for Kepler's law, and I had them name that cell so that when they were producing an output formula, here, oops, I'm back here. They were looking at taking the square root of the distance cubed rather than just looking at symbols, and this made it a little more meaningful to them. It was Hubble's law activity where the students were given a group of galaxies with redshifts, recessional velocities, and distances, and then asked to produce a graph of recessional velocity versus distance, and then find the slope of the trend line as the Hubble constant, which with this group turns out to be about 57. Also, I had them graph recessional velocity versus redshift to see the relationship between the two. Now, this sort of thing is difficult because essentially it takes longer and costs more. It requires increased preparation time. Sometimes you can't cover as much material. In the beginning, there were no ready-made exercises available, so I had to write them all. And some students anyway, would need taught about how to work with spreadsheets and how to do programming with spreadsheets. Also, there are some differences in performance between online versions and natively resident versions of spreadsheets. Now, in assessing this, we did both qualitative and quantitative work. Quantitatively, I did pre-tests and post-tests with the test of astronomy standards and the lunar phases concept inventory, and we got gains with this. The control semesters were active learning, but no computation, and then there were the computational semesters, and for both the TOAST and the LPCI, we got statistically significant gains for both the control semester and the computational semesters. Now, doing a little slightly different statistical analysis here, one of the things that I noted was that there was no difference in gain, no statistical difference in gain between the computational semesters and the control semesters, which is a good thing. So we were showing that this had similar performance to regular active learning. All in all, got a roughly 10% gain with computation between the pre-test and the post-test, and no statistically significant difference in the pre-post gain between active learning and computation, which I am counting as a good thing. We didn't lose anything. Also noted that got higher post-test results than what was reported nationally. Also did a 17-question free response survey with the students, asking them what they thought of the class, what they thought of group work, what they thought of computation. And the results were good. The students approved of the computation. They thought that it aided their learning. Something that I noted was that about 78% of the students said that they thought they could use what they learned about spreadsheets elsewhere. So, now I've mentioned the importance of long-term evaluation because activities in the educational world tend toward the shorter term, and there are many new activities or many new curricula which are implemented with only a semester or two of investigation. Short-term studies often do not tell the full story, and that's what we found. We found variability between the semesters, but we did have a chance to evaluate this curriculum under multiple conditions. We had 6 different cohorts of students who went through this, 3 different course modalities: in person, asynchronous online, and synchronous online. And so what we found was that we're able to test computation under a variety of environments. Computational exercises did increase understanding, and that computation-based curriculums compare favorably with other types of active learning. did get a variable response in pre-post gains from semester, and students like the idea of computation. So, thank you. And along with contact information, I do have slides of reference, a slide of references. And I'll do my best to answer questions that you have.
We've got about 2 minutes for questions.
Yes, I'm curious whether the benefits to the non-science and science students were comparable. Did one group benefit more than the other, like people coming in that were familiar with calculations and spreadsheets benefiting more or less, in terms of gain?
I did not separate them as STEM majors and non-STEM majors. I do know that non-STEM majors appreciated the spreadsheet work and were excited about it. Since we had mixed groups, we didn't segregate them by groups of STEM and groups of fine arts majors. They could help each other with both ideas, and students who understood programming and calculations were able to show, no, this is how you do that sort of expression. That's the best I can answer.
Yeah, so the question there was it comparable between science and non-science focused students, and kind of what were some of the differences you saw there? Just in case anyone missed it. Any other questions for Raymond? Yes, could I have you stay behind the microphone so the stream can hear you? Thank you.
I'm wondering what instrument you use to evaluate student enthusiasm or positive kind of feedback for the course.
So the question there was what kind of
An instrument.
what kind of instrument, yeah, was used to measure.
Response that they like the computational kinds of activities.
So yeah, student feedback on how they felt about the computational activities.
I got that from a survey that I had done, the 17-question free response survey.
After the course, did you have the survey completed?
How long after the course?
How long after the course was finished did you have the survey completed? Or did you do it within the body of the course?
This was done in the last week. The survey was done in the last week of course. The course.
All right.
Did you do anything with follow-up like a few weeks later or a month later to see what difference there was in the positive response to the computation versus the regular type of course?
There was no follow-up after the course with this. I'm not sure how easy that would have been, since they would, at the end of the semester, they would essentially scatter to the four winds.
All right, excellent. Can we get another round for Raymond here? Thank you very much. All right, we're going to switch over to Katie Downing here from Schule Planetarium. Is that right? Sheely Planetarium at Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. She's going to be talking about making constellation stories appropriate for young children.
Are you ready? Oh, this is very low. All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Katie Downing, and I am the planetarium coordinator at Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. We are on the west side of Cleveland, and our primary audience at our planetarium is in the 0 to 7-year-old age range and their families. But our most popular shows are for 0 to 3-year-olds and 3 to 7-year-olds. So as you may be familiar, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but constellation stories are not appropriate 4-year-olds. They are very violent, kidnapping, all sorts of things go on that we just simply cannot tell young children. So constellations are an oral tradition, so we do take a lot of liberties with how we tell our constellation stories, but we do try to stick to at least some elements of those stories. So today I'm going to share with you 2 different constellation stories that we share in the planetarium that all sorts of families and kids absolutely love. So the first story I'm going to share with you is the story of the bears. And so the bears, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor in regular mythology that maybe some of you share in your planetarium. Callisto was the nymph that was loved by Jupiter. Juno was jealous of her, so she transformed Callisto into a bear and left her about to wander. Okay, not bad yet, except for the cheating and Zeus and Hera drama going on there. Then Arcus was Callisto's son who was hunting in the forest. He came upon his mother. He would have killed her. Okay, so we don't want to kill our moms in our stories. And then Jupiter just threw him into the sky, right? Okay, so version 1 that we share, where we're not cheating on anybody, our story starts with Zeus and Hera like to play board games. And Hera always wins. So Zeus wants to practice playing board games so he can get better and maybe win a game, because everybody can play a board game and everybody knows how it feels to lose all the time. That is me. I love playing them, but I always lose them. So Zeus found Callisto and her son, who absolutely loved to play board games all the time. So Zeus would sneak off into the woods and play board games with Callisto and her son, and over time, Hera notices that Zeus is getting better at games, so she thinks he's practicing without her. So she follows him into the woods. And then the trees are all in the way. You can't quite see what's going on. Zeus knows she's there. And Zeus uses his magic and turns Callisto and her son into bears. And he says, Hera, I'm just practicing with bears. I'm just practicing board games with bears. Come on. You can't get mad at me. They're not people. They're bears. And Hera still doesn't like that, so she ends up throwing the bears into the sky. So a little bit of the same story. Another version that we tell that the kids absolutely love, and I myself really get into this one. We at Lake Erie Nature and Science Center have beehives, and we have an observational hive indoors that the kids absolutely love to look at all the time. So this story actually involves Hercules. We say that Hercules, his job is going around and beating up monsters and saving the day. We establish monsters are not real. Hercules was not real. And I asked the kids, do you think he beat up monsters all the time? And some kids say, yeah, that's just what he did. But we established that Hercules, that was his job. So he didn't like to do that all the time. He liked to come home and relax. Now, the kids find it very hard to believe that Hercules did not have Wi-Fi, Hercules did not have YouTube, and Hercules did not have tablets. But after we get over the shock of, what was the 90s, we figure out that Hercules loved to work in his garden. Now, I have no idea if this has anything to do with mythology, but Hercules has a garden. Kids in our area do help out in their families' gardens quite a bit. There's a big gardening movement in our area. And we talk about the bees that Hercules has in the middle of his garden. So, one day, Hercules goes to beat up monsters and save the day. While he's gone, the mama bear and the baby bear find Hercules' garden. They smush all of his plants, they smash open the beehive and start eating the sticky honey. And when Hercules comes home, the bears are still there, and he's really mad. And we remember he's the strongest guy in the world. So when he comes home and finds the bears, he doesn't just chase them away and say, "Get out of here, bears." He grabs them by their little tails and swings the bears around and throws them into the sky. And they were so covered in honey that they stuck to the stars. So a little bit less, more like the original story, but we're still throwing bears and we're still getting stuck in the sky. And it has the connection to our exhibits that are just down the hall. The other story I'm going to share with you is the story of Delphinus the dolphin. Now, Delphinus, as you may be aware, he's usually associated with helping Poseidon woo fair maiden. There's some kidnapping going on. There's some "I'm gonna make you marry me." There's some "I don't really want to marry you" going on. So we can't kidnap. But dolphins are really cool, and the constellation actually kind of looks like a dolphin. So when we have our shows are, it's the same topic for the whole week, and we switch to a new topic. So we have a 12-week rotating schedule, and we hit the constellation of the day every week. So we go through most of the constellations. So even though Delphinus is very small, we still got to talk about him. So how do you talk about a dolphin that kidnaps a maiden? Well, you age down the characters. So Poseidon is just a kid who lives on an island. And there's a girl who lives on the land. Now, binoculars in our audiences, like binoculars are the coolest thing in the world. I don't know if your audiences also think binoculars are cool, but all of our classes, they get binocular experience. So the kids that come to our planetarium are experts in trying to use binoculars. So Poseidon lives on the island, and the girl lives on the sea, or on the land. They can't really talk to each other, but they can use their binoculars. So they wave at each other a lot, and every day they check on each other. And then the little boy, Poseidon, starts writing messages to her, and he writes it on a piece of paper, and he sticks it in a bottle, and he throws it in the ocean. But it doesn't go anywhere. So Delphinus pushes the bottle to the land so the girl can get the message. She writes back, and it's like texting with dolphins. Delphinus just like pushes the bottle back and forth. But then Poseidon wants to invite the girl over for juice, cookies, and games. At this point, the parents are like, "Oh yeah, juice and cookies." He invites her over, but she responds back in her bottle message, she can't swim. So Poseidon asks Delphinus if he could help, and the little girl jumps into the ocean and holds on to Delphinus's fin, and he pulls her over to the island, and they have their juice and cookies and games, and everything is hunky-dory and consensual. I had to say it. So she still came to Poseidon's island. She was not kidnapped. And it includes things that our audiences, like binoculars, that they know and absolutely love. Now, I could go on forever about all of the stories and the adaptations that we have done, but these are two examples of how we have taken things that are in our museum and kind of altered some of the constellation stories to make them fun, but you all laughed when I said juice and cookies because you knew what I was talking about. The kids are just thinking juice and cookies. So I thank you all so much for your time here coming and listening to our silly little stories that we tell in the planetarium, but I forget the originals. I had to do research on the originals because we are working with 0 to 7-year-olds all the time, so we don't tell the originals anymore. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Katie. We do have some time for questions here.
Oh, goodness.
Have you ever considered using Native American sky stories, which have a lot less rape and kidnapping in them,
We do occasionally tell Native American stories. My staff that also teaches are biologists by nature. So it's up to me to find all of the stories and kind of tell them how to do the stories. So we have kind of a little library of stories, and now that we've established our Greek ones, we're moving on to other cultures. So we're just starting that process now.
Yeah, there are a lot of resources out there if you look for Native American skywatchers. A lot of natives have actually, indigenous people have actually researched their own and published stories from different cultures.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're going to look into that for sure.
Thank you for sharing your stories. I enjoyed them. And I think you kind of covered this, but I was curious. You created these stories. You just researched you looked up the original story and then sort of just use your experience with the littles to make it the kid friendly.
Absolutely. It's based more on our experience and what kids and parents can kind of understand. But yeah, I haven't heard these stories anywhere else, so we just adapted them from originals or versions of the originals.
You have 152 million things already that you have to do, but I would enjoy seeing a published version of your stories in the future.
That was mentioned at the last conference, and I may or may not be working on that.
All right, I do have a question of my own.
Yes.
Which was the hardest story to kind of twist in a pleasant way, would you say?
The hardest story. Well, any of the stories that involve Zeus. No, I'm just going to stop there. Any of the stories that involve Zeus. We switch to, and any stories that involve like kidnapping or forced encounters, basically, we have to switch it to like board games, or they went on a nature hike or things like that. So it takes some creative thinking, but yeah, really any of those like extra violent ones.
All right, thanks so much. Any other questions for Katie?
Oh, another one, yes.
I'll make this quick. Have you ever thought of having some of the kids, because sometimes if we have a summer camp, we'll actually have kids make their own stories, and sometimes they'll share one kid's constellation, they'll have another constellation, and they'll have a story that involves the previous kid's constellation. So have you tried that also?
Yes, we do that for our summer camps as well, and any other programs where we have the kids for just a little bit longer. The programs that involve these stories in particular are our 25-minute programs that are for the general public. But yes, we have had kids make up their own versions of stories and share those as well.
All right, thanks so much, Katie. All right, tough act to follow. We've got Alan Gould from the Lawrence Hall of Science, University of California, Berkeley, who will be presenting on planetarium activities and audience participation.
Sure. Okay, how does Windows work? To do the presentation. Yeah, I knew that. Thank you. Okay, well, good morning.
Good morning.
I want to give you an idea about a program that I've been working on for my entire career, planetarium activities for successful shows. And some of you already know about this, but for those of you who already know, this is an update. There's a major update. It's based at Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley, and it started in like 1979 when there was a summer institute for planetarium people. Like there were 2 of them that were held that summer. And as a result of that institute, there was a document made that became IPS, International Planetarium Society, publication number 10. Okay, and that's called the Planetarium Educators Workshop Guide. This QR code that you see here is no, that's where I think that might go to the IPS website. I'm just there's a pass page now on the IPS website where we're starting to put things. But what you see here is we have oh, I know what it is. The live interactive shows part, that's the page on the IPS website where you can find a link to the past page. And that's where we're putting up free materials. Now, these are the books as they were originally published, and some of you may have them. The old-timers might have some of these. But that's paper. It came out in paper, and there were slides, and we sold them. Okay, but we hardly made any money off of that. So we decided, or I decided, and I got permission. Well, kind of got permission. We're working on it, put it that way, to make them available for free, and that's started now. This is the original IPS publication number 10, and it has these modules. Actually, it's a guide for conducting workshops for planetarium people. It's essentially a professional development to learn how or enhance your abilities to do live, interactive, or what we at the time called participatory-oriented planetariums. And the name of that project was POP, P-O-P, Participatory-Oriented Planetariums. So that was the book that came out, and it was designed to be able to spread the word. We weren't the originators of this concept, but we were kind of pioneers in the realm. So this became volume 1 of what later was, we ran some other summer institutes in 1989, 90, and 91 with a project that was called Participatory-Oriented Planetariums for Schools. Okay, and we focused on teachers at that time. And then we expanded out the publication because we had planetarium programs that we could add. You know, we developed more programs in the interim in those 10 years. So this is an old program that you may realize that it's old by the dates I've been giving you, but there's a lot of stuff that still works. This is past volume 2. I think there's probably about 15 volumes. Volume 2 was developed by a guy named Gerald Mallon, who's passed away now. But these are great activities that you can do in the planetarium. I won't read off the names. You can just glance at them. And this is one that is available for free online now. Ideas for doing things in the planetarium, actively involving your audience. Let's see, volumes 3 and 4. Well, 3 was resources, and those are way outdated, so I'm not bothering putting those up on the web. Volume 4 was a sort of a guide to how to use a portable planetarium, and I think I put that one up on the web. The rest of the volumes are full planetarium shows as we had developed them, each of which has either 1, 2, or maybe 3 or 4 activities, some maybe 5. Audience participatory activities. This particular one is, I consider like the quintessential audience activity. So let me describe it. You know, we don't have a presenter stand and point out constellations and tell stories. Well, they'll tell stories. You can't get away from that. Storytelling is very important. But we don't point out the constellations. What we do in this program is we hand out the star maps. We teach them to use the star maps, and then they point out constellations for each other. And by the end of the program, they know how to use a star map, and they can go find the constellations, which you couldn't normally do if you just had, pointed out to you, Leo, well, in the real sky. Of course, now we have these totally different. But and those are really cool. So technology is changing, and I'm thinking how can we alter this show to incorporate digital apps that will do that. Generally, how the books are done is there's a script, but it's not intended to be read word for word. It's just sort of a guide. But the important thing is that there's questions. And those of you who are on the mini lips on Monday or Tuesday, I guess it was. I'm getting discombobulated here. Questions are a really, really important part of audience participation. Probably the most important part. And then there's, this is how we arranged it. I think it's common, not exactly like this, but actions in the digital world. Those actions, some of those are digital things that you make happen on the dome. The volume 6 is Red Planet Mars. This is I'm not going to read off the activities, but in this one, the most interesting activity is find the planet. But you first find red stars. Okay, we first look around and point out the red stars, and then which one of those is Mars? Okay, how do you know? How do you determine that? So the audience will be divided into groups. They'll watch each group will be assigned one of those red stars and tell if it's moved over a period of time. I'm going to flip fairly quickly through these. Those two were appendices in the original Planetarium Educators Workshop Guide. So those were made volumes 5 and 6. Volume 7 was not in the appendix, but we have made that available for free for a long, long time. And so that is up on the IPS website now too. Here's more of those volumes. Okay, there's one called Colors from Space, which actually is a cool physics thing. Fill the dome with different colors of light and see how it affects the things that you're looking at. That's not all there is. There's diffraction gratings and things like that. How big is the universe? That's the one where I mentioned in the mini lips that I had gone through that whole program once, where we ended up with galaxies, telling distances by measurements of galaxies. And at the end of one of those programs, a kid raised his hand and said, "What's a galaxy?" And here I'd been saying galaxies over and over again. 10 is who discovered America. Okay, there were people other than Columbus, but that's about celestial navigation as far as the activities go. Astronomies of the Americas, that name got changed to Native American Astronomy. No, actually it was changed from, it was changed to Native American Astronomy, but it probably should be changed again, like Indigenous American Astronomy. These terminology changes over the years. Stonehenge was the first show I ever gave at Lawrence Hall of Science. That's a fun program. And then Northern Lights was developed by Frank Peterson from Tromsø, Norway. It was a sort of a sabbatical project of his that became a show. And our very own star was a NASA-funded one. Strange Planets was also NASA-funded, and that was the Kepler mission, which we worked for. So this is the, okay, maybe that wasn't the QR code for the IPS pass page. This is the QR. It was? Okay, so I made these slides so long ago and I submitted them that I didn't refer to them yet. So this is it, if you want to take a picture of it. If you can't capture that, just go to the IPS website, and on the left side, there's a resources, and scroll down and look for live interactive programs. Okay, and that's where you'll find the link to the pass page. And there also is, we're developing also a Lawrence Hall of Science page for pass, but it's just under development. We're breaking up each program into all the component activities and making them available as separate activities, because they can be, a lot of them can be used as kind of standalone things, In fact, that's what a lot of people have done. Pull an activity here, pull an activity there to meet your standards. And so that's the QR code for the Lawrence Hall of Science Pass page. And that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Alan. We do have plenty of time here for some questions. Yeah, go right ahead.
Really not so much a question, it's just you got me thinking about when you said about going with the one to more the digital aspect. It started me thinking already, like, the apps tend to navigate naturally for where you are relative to the Earth as opposed to the planetarium setup. So maybe the beginning might just simply be orientating yourself in the planetarium using your app. And then from there, what are we seeing in the dome and what's hidden from below, and maybe kind of working that way, just like as an orientation kind of piece.
Orientation is a problem with using those apps in the dome. Of course, you can't do it because it's going to be looking at the real sky, which is kind of, I mean, that's an interesting thing, but it's like, yeah, but I think it's good. You know, I'm thinking too about how do I think we still need to use something like a paper map in a big planetarium where it's hard to hand out things. I did a workshop at a planetarium conference, the IPS conference in Toronto, where the name of the program was How to Do Audience Participation in a Big Dome. And I had never done that before. So it was just out there. But I think in a big dome, you could put portions of, like the northern horizon portion of the star map, just projected in the northern horizon, small, and each horizon, each of the cardinal directions. I think that's the way to do it in a big dome. But I still really do want to, at the end of the show, say, there is one other thing. We have a Uncle Al's star map, Star Wheel, which is a planisphere that's available for free. It's cool. Yeah? You like that?
Ever.
Yeah.
and going along, actually, we were just like orientating the dome to what the real world is to show the difference. But I think going along with the paper is having the paper and saying which was easier to do. And maybe they'll encourage the paper because, like, oh, the paper was so quick just to see on here.
The paper has distinct advantages.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, definitely. Question back there?
So we had someone suggest putting maybe a SkyMap QR code on the back. We do use those in our dome too. They're awesome.
Thank you.
All right, can we get another thank you for Alan here? All right, so last up for session one, we have David Hurd from Pennsylvania Western University and Noreen Grice talking a little bit about Stars for All, including those who are blind and visually impaired.
All right, great. Welcome. Hey, most of you know me from Edinburgh University, which we just changed. We merged with two other sister universities, so now we're Pennsylvania Western. So if I keep using the term Edinburgh University, forgive me. Anyway, hey, so I hope everybody got their tactile books when you checked in. We're passing some out here. Make sure you get one, get two. I am sharing this time. It's so great to be here with Noreen. I know that I could do probably a hour and a half workshop, and I know Noreen could do an hour and a half workshop on this, and I only have 6 minutes, so I'm just going to roll right along. And basically, I don't have any particular PowerPoint to share with you, but I just want to emphasize these books because these are geared for all learners, okay? So if you've seen our materials, they're really excellent to use with everybody. Noreen's materials can be used by anybody. My materials can be used by anybody, okay? So we want to encourage you to use these materials with all your students because we all are somewhat haptic or tactile, aren't we? If somebody's holding something, what do you want to do? You want to grab it and feel it and touch it. And that's kind of the idea here. So, but I need to emphasize, I think the biggest thing I can emphasize here, does everybody get a book, by the way? There's more. Give these to your local library. Give these to your local schools. So take plenty. I've got plenty of those. So make sure you grab them. But let me say this. This is very important. And we give out a lot of these tactile books, but a good tactile is really, or I should say, most tactiles are only as good as the description that goes along with it. So if you just hand this book to somebody and you don't emphasize that the QR code takes you to the descriptive text on its own, it's not that valuable. Okay, it can be, but I want to overemphasize that all of our books have a QR code that will take you to our website, and then on that website you look for that particular book, click on it, and the descriptive text pops up. Okay, so all the information is found on the QR codes. Don't forget to go there. All right, so we have one on the upcoming eclipses. You're probably wondering, why did they include the 2017 total solar eclipse path on there too? That's because these are made with masters, and masters take a lot of time, and we just used the same one and doctored it to save time. So it has the 2017 path, the October of 2023 path, and the path for 2024. All right, on it. And basically, this book has 3 general tactiles. One of them highlights the dynamics of a total solar eclipse. Tactile 2 shows what it is in partial and then totality and coming out of into partial again. By the way, we just discovered, this is kind of cool, and I don't have a whole lot of time, I'll make this quick. The moon we happened to make, this is coincidental, if I can find it, it's exactly the size of a quarter. All right, so what I do is I have the students take the quarter in there, and then if you see the concept of a total solar, and you just move that quarter a little bit further from the earth, and all of a sudden you see that oh, and as a person who is blind in one of my workshops pointed out, that means that the moon's not covering the entire disk of the sun, right? There, bingo. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of a neat little ancillary activity on there. We'll write that up and put that on the QR code. The other book we have, brand new product, so this is out. Please get these out. If you're in the path of totality or near the path of totality, take several of them. Again, take them to schools, take them to libraries. If you happen to have a school for the blind nearby, get them to those places also. But again, Noreen stuff, my stuff's really good for all students to learn. The other product, and I didn't grab it, is somebody passing those out? I hope you. I got several more copies of this book. This is a brand new book that we're really proud of too. And on the inside, you'll find an insert, and that's only because I forgot to put it on the front cover. Okay, and it's hard to go back and print these. But anyway, so the Braille title label, again, it says scan for text in Braille, and a person who's blind or visually impaired can easily scan that text, comes up with refreshable Braille or readable text, whatever. It's all right there. And this just highlights light pollution. So, and we picked 2 constellations. One of them is Orion, your general wintertime constellation. So we illustrate Orion up at the Bays Mountain Observatory, and we illustrate Orion from this conference center, and we illustrate Orion in downtown Kingsport. Okay, and so this whole book is about light pollution. All right, and then we go on to a summer constellation. We talk about Cygnus up at the Bays Mountain Observatory, and we show Cygnus from this conference center, and of course we highlight Cygnus in downtown Kingsport. and everybody's like, yeah, one. That's right. Didn't have. That's it. Period. Into discussion. So I think my time's probably almost up here. So, but like I said, these materials, we have plenty of them. Make sure you grab them. Make sure you take them. And it's been such a privilege, such an honor to work with this audience that comes into your planetarium. You're like, oh man, I don't have anything. Contact me, and we have some other resources and materials that you can use in your planetarium. I know Anna Green has done some amazing stuff with different populations in the planetarium, and there's just this is a wealth of information, and we're so glad to be together. And I'm so proud to turn it over to Noreen, because she's done some amazing stuff, and we've never presented together, so this is really fun. So I'm going to turn it over to her now to take the rest of the time.
So, 39 years ago, my life changed when I was giving a planetarium show in Boston, and a group of blind students came to the planetarium. It was a pre-recorded show. I asked them how they liked it after the show. They said they didn't like it, it wasn't very good, wasn't accessible. Never occurred to me that astronomy wasn't accessible until that group came. And it bothered me so that I did some research, and I found out there weren't very many resources available, and very, very limited images that were touchable. So I made it my personal mission to figure out how to make astronomy more accessible to blind and visually impaired. That was 39 years ago. So over the years, I've worked on some books, I've worked on exhibits, I've done teacher and student workshops. Some of the materials are no longer in print, but I'd like to show you some of the things that are still available. So, currently available materials. First, I'll begin with, since we're talking about the sun, I worked on some projects about the sun, and so I have colorful tactile sun images, which are in color, they're touchable, and they're a variety of images. All these things are on my personal website, www.youcandoastronomy.com. It's actually on page 83 of your program if you look on your cell phone, but I'll have a QR code at the end. A recent project I've done is with Dr. Heidi Hamill. We created a digital book called Touch the Solar System. Now, this is a set of individual sheets of colorful images of solar system objects which you place on a tablet called the Talking Tactile Tablet. And when you place it on the tablet, there's a QR code on each image, which doesn't work with a cell phone, but it works with this tablet so that when you touch different parts of the image, the tablet will describe what you are touching. And not only that, but actually show you visually the images, so the narration. So if you are deaf, you can be touching the image and the narration appears. If you are visually impaired, you're touching the image and you can hear the narration. So it's available in different formats for you. My first book was called Touch the Stars, and that came out in 1990. It's now in its 5th edition, and was recently reviewed in Physics Today and Sky and Telescope magazine with favorable reviews. Touch the Stars has been an important resource because it's used actually in a lot of planetariums. It's a book that has print and braille on text pages and images which are raised up, and there's a variety of images, the kind of images that you would probably have in any planetarium show. So the Big Dipper, finding Polaris using the Big Dipper, Lyra and the Summer Triangle, the Ring Nebula, Orion, the Orion Nebula, motion of planets, waxing and waning of moon phases, lunar orbit, total solar eclipse, total lunar eclipse, planets of our solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, comet, meteor shower, the Milky Way galaxy, globular star cluster, and northern deep field of galaxies. So you can imagine that at least one or two of these images you would be describing in a live show. So a lot of people, even in the mobile domes, have a copy of this that can pull out quickly, and you have a resource right there. Now, over the years, people have contacted me, educators have contacted me to say, I feel a little uncomfortable about teaching people with disabilities because I don't know what to do. And then another group of people have contacted me saying, I have a disability and I don't know where to go, where I can go that is accessible. So I decided to combine these topics in a book called Everyone's Universe. So the first part of the book gives you sort of tested methods, best practices for making astronomy accessible to people who have mobility disabilities, visual disabilities, neurological disabilities, communication disabilities, hearing disabilities. And then the second part of the book is a travel guide to different planetariums around the country to what they have made available, so you kind of get ideas from what other people have done. One other thing I've added that's very different is it's not tactile, it's got nothing to do with Braille, but it's a historical interpretation that I've added in. And I did this, I've created a historical portrayal of astronomer Mariah Mitchell, and I have to credit Mike Francis for Galileo bringing me into this, and have performed with Galileo at the National Air and Space Museum. So that's just something different, you know, bringing historical character, which makes it more accessible to learn about history for everybody. So putting this all together, this is the image that appears on page 83 of your program guide, though it's very small on your phone. These are the kind of things that I do have available, and you can find out more on my website at www.youcandoastronomy.com. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, David and Noreen. We appreciate it. Yeah, come right on up. Yeah.
Hi. So I've come across a couple of resources for people with visual impairment in terms of astronomy, but one thing that frustrates me, all of these resources are very Northern Hemisphere specific, and regardless of whether you're in the Northern or the Southern Hemisphere, you probably should at least know that the Southern Sky exists. Have you had any sort of thoughts about creating these wonderful resources, which I acknowledge are very expensive to create, and including some content to make them accessible in both hemispheres? Because especially in the Southern Hemisphere, we don't have the budget to make these sorts of resources, and it's always very frustrating to grab them and find that they're no use to us.
Yeah, sure. That's an important consideration. I know that I've thought about that. Well, we have, I think, in both our resources, we do have some constellations that are visible in both hemispheres. But to do you're talking about the southern circumpolar constellations. So that's something I will definitely keep in mind for the next kind of book I do on constellations. And David, do you have a comment about that, southern?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's difficult to do these projects, but we are branching out, and we are talking to international partners now with NASA, and I know Noreen is also. We do have some of our books are translated into Spanish, but that's about as far as we've gone. And we've worked with South America. We've worked with Chile and Argentina for the 2020, 2021 eclipses. We basically did an eclipse book for them, but that's about the extent of it. But more needs to be done.
Great presentation. John Keller from Fisk Planetarium. I just want to make sure to share that in the same solar tactile realm, we're working with the NASA Punch mission to put together tactiles also of the sun represented over time from 1000 AD up until today.
Nice.
And we'll be presenting at our session tomorrow on the Girl Scout patch we put together. But amazing work that you've done, and happy to share these as well.
Great.
All right, any other questions for David and Noreen here? Yeah. We've got time for one more here.
So my question is, in addition to like the actual materials, you know, the raised text and things, are there any differences in teaching a group of people, you know, pedagogically that can't see? Because like I have a tendency to move around and wave my hands and things. What sort of advices do you have for the actual delivery in terms of, okay, I have a group and I need to adjust things?
Yeah.
What sort of advice do you have like that?
That's a great question too, and a big topic. But again, I'm just going to be very brief, and that is descriptive. Hey, look over there. If you moved, you know, we need to be more descriptive in how we communicate.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'd also add in that the phrase "less is more." So really focusing in on what you're talking about rather than, you know, putting in extraneous material, so people can really focus on you know, the object at hand, the phenomena that you're talking about. Less is more.
Absolutely. And again, there's plenty more over there in those boxes. I don't want to take any home, so please take them.
All right, you know where to find them if you have more questions. One more thank you here.
Thank you, Maureen.
All right, and that does conclude our session 1, so feel free. We've got about a half hour before papers start up again.
Are you the moderator for the next one as well?